Alright, so here we're going to be talking about how to remove noise from items in Audacity. And so I've got like kind of a breakdown of like my main points. First things first, always import your audio into Audacity. This is like just best practices, I don't know. Makes it super easy for you to save things, and I would also recommend you saving constantly throughout this process because Audacity may crash on you a lot. And so what I did was you can actually save this as a default for Audacity to import audio. And so then what I did was I had like an hour of me just like recording different like attempts at verses and choruses for a song, and now I've broken them up based off of the song structure. But if you're doing field recordings, then I would recommend that you break up your sounds by how loud they are for this first process. And so you have sounds that are of similar decibel level or of similar dynamic range together, that are grouped together into tracks. And that just helps for normalizing, because then you'll be able to normalize all of those together, and it sort of preserves the dynamic changes, or just the dynamicness of the track. I don't know. So the way I like to do that is first I'll normalize my most quiet audio tracks, and these are gonna then be our reference for noise removal. And so right here I've got this one track or one piece that I've picked out that is like super quiet. And so we're gonna go over here and hit effect, repeat normalize in a moment. But first off, what I want to do is I want to go through and pull out all of the other chunks of audio, because what this is going to give us is a whole lot of like noise for Audacity to use like as a reference. And I'm not being like too careful about my clips. Handy thing with Audacity, if you hit shift and the arrow, it moves that way when you're selecting audio. If you hit shift and control, it moves that way. But like they're kind of like opposite of one another. And so when you hit, you can think of it as like when you hit control and shift, it's like, yo, you're moving back away from, or you're like shortening it. But, and so whatever key you press shortens it in that direction. I don't know. So I've deleted all of the noises in that direction. I'm wondering which of these is actually the loudest or the quietest. So we can zoom in right there. And yeah, this one's this one has more dynamic range. We'll give this one a shot. And so we also want to be sure to pull out any blips and bloops that may be left over from shoddy cuts in my case, or just from like the recording in general. So there are a couple here. Okay, and now what we'll do is take this one, go to effect, okay. So we've normalized. Oh wait, no we haven't. We've just zoomed in, so I thought we'd normalized. So now we're going to normalize. So since normalize is the last thing I'd done, I can just hit Control R. Be sure you know what effect you'd last done before you do that. And so now we see that our noise got much louder along with all of this. And so that's what we want. That is the ticket. And so I'm sure to cut off the transients here. Potential transients. I have no idea. Yeah, they're not, but we'll leave them. Okay, cool. Yeah. I may actually pull this out. Just because it is kind of me singing. Okay. So now we zoom out. And now what we have is 45 seconds of noise. That is like from a recording in our track. And you can hear that like that click track is kind of in there, and it's changing as, so that may kind of mess with things in this instance. I like to not have a click track in my recordings, but I don't often remove the click track from my recordings. So just a thing to keep in mind. And so now I'm just gonna select everything. Zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so go up to noise, noise removal, get noise profile after selecting your noise segment, and then hit Control A, go to effect, noise removal, and you can like dial in your noise. I typically just like to leave this as is. I find it's pretty good. And hit OK. And now we wait, because this is going to take a while, because like we just gave it like a 45-second segment of audio to use as a reference. So we will check back when this is done. Shoot! It hit me. Okay, so during that noise removal, it dawned on me that we haven't like gone through and normalized all of this audio. And that is really kind of like important for kind of pulling the noise out and making it louder, but also so that it's easier to remove. So I'm going to go through and quickly not repeat noise removal, but normalize, not everything, just one at a time. And so I'm trying to look for, like, if there are any really big loud points within any of my tracks, like, because stuff like that, like this loud point caused the entire rest of this to be quieter, and so stuff like that would be a segment of audio I might normalize on its own. See, so now when I normalize them all together, they're all pretty similar. And then when I normalize this sucker, heck, it may even be a good idea to see, like, that's super loud noise. I'm just gonna delete that. But so yeah, you want to be sure to have normalized all of your audio. So I'm going to go through and do that real fast. So one thing that hit me while I was going through and normalizing stuff is let's see. So what I had done was I had normalized all of this, like, noise, and that's just, like, not a good idea to do when you've already, like, picked out your noise segment. But if you're interested in finding a louder noise segment, that's a good idea. Otherwise, what I'd recommend is just kind of if you're going through and being picky about, like, what segments you're normalizing, just normalize the audio that you want. So that it doesn't, like, just sort of abuse that noise in between tracks. But yeah. We'll be back when I'm done normalizing. Ooh, so just in case you're curious how, like, I break up my what segments I normalize, I'm just gonna undo everything I normalized on this track. You see how, like, not everything, but for the most part, like, most of the loudness is similar, just because this is all supposed to be the same thing over and over and over again. The way I did that was by looking at these transients, and, like, I may even have been able to get away with doing these three together, or these two together, and then these two, and then this one on its own. But then I did those, and then that, and then those, and that. So yeah. Where's my box? Okay, so now we've got everything nicely normalized. And all pretty loud. Oh, except for the pre-chorus. That was because I was gonna do that a bit more individually. We're gonna say fuck that for now. So, a couple thoughts I had on normalizing. You want to be sure to capture like all of the audio, like the beginning and the end, so that I don't know, you're catching all of the transient goodies. Alright. Now, since down here we have our reference, we're going to go to noise removal just to be sure that we have that as our noise profile. Select everything, then go to Effect, Noise Removal, okay. And so this is going to take a second. Also, one thing you can do before doing this like super loud noise removal that I like to do is I'll just get some like quieter noise and do a noise removal of that, but not from this like reference noise. I'll be sure to not include that in that noise removal. So I'll remove like just some quieter noise first, just to kind of be sure that the bass is removed, and then I'll pull out the loud noise so that it's absolutely flat. Or not absolutely flat, but it's like really flat. And I may have mentioned earlier that like I had a click track going on some headphones that were really loud, and so because of the reverb of the bathtub I was recording this in, you have that click track kind of present throughout. And I'm not going to try removing that with Audacity. That's best to be pulled out with a filter, and so, or an EQ. And so EQing and filtering are going to be things that I don't recommend you use Audacity for, because it applies effects in like a static fashion versus like letting you tweak a sound while you're listening to it. You have to do the preview bullshit. And so I use Audacity for noise removal, and then you go back and find those frequencies, and like with an EQ, it would be best to, or not, with a click track, it would be best to use like an EQ to try and pull it out. But with something like wind, then wind is going to be at a lower frequency than if you're like doing a wind and a harp, for instance. Wind's going to be super low, harp's going to be really high frequency, and so you can use a high pass filter to trim off that low end of the wind. You can also use an EQ if you want, but I like the filter because you can also resonate that low end that you've cut out back in, or if you're using a high pass filter, you can like resonate the high frequencies back in. And so like if you have a high pitched sound and you're using a high pass filter on it and it's just like not sounding good, try throwing a low pass filter on it and turning up the resonance just a little bit more than you normally would, and dial in the cutoff just right, and you can actually like kind of emphasize your the high that you want, while high that you don't want, and then, or you could use a band pass, but Yeah, so this is finally done. And let's give it a listen. Just want to be sure nothing else is soloed. Oh, and you look here, and this is like flat. Flat, 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 flat. Like so flat. And that's what's gonna really get us. And you look here, like so flat. It's not perfect, but it's pretty. It's pretty nice. So let's listen.
Your smile takes me for a while.
Oh.
Your smile.
Let's start that over because I panned it hard right. So you can still kind of hear the click track and a little bit of noise, but it's much quieter.
Smile.
So what we can do now, zoom in a little bit. And go to Effect, Noise Removal, and then I like to sort of get the noise profile of each of these. If it is really important, you can go through and like we did before and trim out all of your audio and like make another track, trim out all your audio and then just have your noise. But for this example, I'm just gonna use the short bit of noise here at the beginning. So I just may have like done that twice. But the reason is because I really like to be sure that I've got the noise profile. So now let's give it another listen. You can kind of hear the click.
Your smile takes me for a while.
But like that sounds pretty good. Like, I mean, my singing is not good, but here let's actually get our original audio that we had done this with. Always keep organized samples. And like me, like I get samples from a lot of different sources. So like this was a remix I did of someone else's song. It's called Wasp 12B by Grimbit. And so I kept that in like a separate folder. Play It Forward was like a sample competition I was doing. Fill drums, those are Phil's drums. Loops, these are loops I think I've gotten from like other folks. Yeah, or no, these are loops that I've made. I need to rename that. But that's one thing I like to be sure to do is like rename stuff homemade when I did it. But like these EDM samples, this is another sample competition. And homemade samples are actual homemade samples. Let Us Go Tromping. This is like for a song that I'm working on, but none of these are mine. These are all actually Stinson's, Laura's, and I think Mike's. So yeah. And so since this these vocal recordings I made them. I put them in my one folder, and so here is our original, right? And so we're importing that like original hour-long audio, because I wasn't smart and like I didn't keep just a little bit of it in its shitty original form. But, so once we have this imported, I'll be able to show you a reference. No need to make you wait with me. Where's... Okay, so we've got our reference audio all loaded up, and we're just going to make it stereo. And then move it to the top. And so here is what we had. Oh. Also, we're just going to normalize this, just because it not normalize. Effect. We're going to amplify to that. And this isn't what I had done with the original audio, but the original audio was really quiet. And so the reason I'm amplifying it is, you're amplifying our reference, is to just kind of, since I'd gone back through and normalized everything individually, it should hypothetically all be close to 0 or 1. And so that's what I'm doing with this audio. But then I'm going to go back through and normalize the segment that I'm, so that like, or depending on what it looks like, so that we have something that doesn't look absurd. But then that should conclude this first little video on how to normalize vocals, and just kind of discussing my like Audacity workflow a little bit. Okay, so clearly this didn't get amplified too much. So what we're gonna do, go through and normalize all this. Solo it, unsolo that. And see, like right here, we've got like a lot of loud, like a lot more going on in between. Like there's like noticeable shit happening right here. Even like right there. And so if we go back and select this one, you notice, like, you can still sort of hear it, but like we're not picking it up as much.
Your smile takes me for a while.
And like I can still hear it a little bit, but like that's a click track, and as I'd mentioned a lot, click tracks and wind and other like sounds that sort of vary throughout time, whereas like noise is just like it does change throughout time, but not as much, or the way it changes throughout time is in relation to like the audio happening around, and the like a click track that doesn't really change so much depending on the audio happening around. Wind depends a little bit, but like again, not as much as like noise, because noise is literally like the sound of a place, and sometimes that's like what you want to capture. So some closing remarks have been said, and I think this will help with cleaning up your audio in Audacity. I'll get into more detail on filtering and EQing in a DAW. I'm going to be using Ableton because I haven't been able to get great results out of anything else. All the other DAWs out there look too much like Logic, and that's just not how I think. So yeah. Later.